accustomed to being a championship series or
Too
game
much.
this year, but
Well, we want to thank our guest
I'm not
today,
saying
Steve
anymore.
Shigaris. You can check out his blog at campaign2020focus.com in Hancock. All right, Steve. I mean, you're talking to a St. Louis radio station and you have the audacity to talk that way?
Well, the poor guy's from Massachusetts.
You're acting like the President of the United States or the Speaker of the House, and boy, those two are acting like they're kids in a sandbox, aren't they?
It's pretty amazing to watch. But you know what? It shouldn't be a surprise to people. I mean, this is the kind of thing we've seen from this president when he was a candidate. We saw him go up against many of the Republican candidates he was running against. We've seen him do this to many other Democrats. It shouldn't be a surprise. What's interesting is that Pelosi has decided to take the gloves off and punch back. And I think that, to me, is really what the most remarkable part of all this is.
And it almost seems as though the Speaker is pushing the president's buttons. It looks as though she's learned from the Republicans trying to deal with him and others. I think she's intentionally trying to push his buttons to further cause more anger and discontent with him.
Yeah, maybe, but you know what it is, I think, and we can't underestimate that she has an issue with her own people. She has Democrats who are calling for impeachment. They had meetings this week where they basically said, you need to go down the impeachment path. And Nancy Pelosi and the other House Democratic leaders do not want to go down that road. They see they believe it's a political loser long term. They say it diverts attention away from them contrasting themselves versus the Republicans and Trump on the issues. And she also feels, frankly, that Trump would use an inevitable exoneration in the Senate as, a no collusion, I've been exonerated again, and you try to use it for political victory. So she doesn't want to go down that road, so she's talking to these Democrats and saying, okay, I'm going to get out there, and I'm going to fight against the president publicly, but let's be patient, let's let the process work its way through, and we're not going to open up impeachment. Also, by the way, working against her are two polls out this week that say that a majority of Americans want Democrats in Congress to move on from the Russia investigation. So she's got to deal with all that political stuff. And, I think she runs a risk getting in these fights with Trump because we've seen, remember Marco Rubio got into it with Trump. Remember Jeb Bush got into it with Trump. All these guys, they all fell to the wayside when they got into the mud with him because basically it just diverts attention away from the real issues. And for some reason, Trump seems to, I wouldn't say he's a winner, but he's less of a loser than the others when they get into these mud fights.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that some of this behavior on Pelosi's part is driven by trying to shore up a caucus to continue to stay behind her. You've got Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, really pushing hard for impeachment hearings. What is the relative split in the Democratic caucus between the pro-impeachment faction and the that's bad politics faction?
Well, there's about a couple of dozen of very vocal Democrats that are pushing for impeachment, and these are, progressive, liberal Democrats who basically say this guy is a crook, it's all in paper, it's all been documented, Mueller laid it out for us, let's go and nail this guy. But I think, that is easy for them to say because they're not facing tough re-election bids next year. They're not the ones that are really worried about trying to maintain or grow the majority in the House and trying to take over the Senate. That's what Nancy Pelosi's worried about, and she's seeing about 30 or so freshman Democrats who won in battleground districts, who won close races, flipped Republican seats, who have constituents who aren't necessarily for an impeachment process. And again, the polling backs this up. Independents and Republicans do not want to see this investigation into Russia continue. They just say it's over with. And so, Pelosi's going to balance those two things, and I think she is looking at this politically and saying impeachment is a loser right now.
You have, in the Republican conference, now a universe of one, Congressman Justin Amash from Michigan, who is publicly calling for Trump's impeachment. It seems to me the politics of that for him don't make a lot of sense. What do you think's going on there?
Well, Amash has been a very, very vocal anti-Trump Republican pretty much from the very beginning. And so I think he's sort of continuing, with that. That's consistent for Amash. I realize that his district is very conservative. There's been talk about perhaps he'll get primaried, and then there's also rumors that he may consider running against Trump. Maybe not as a Republican, but there's some talk that the Libertarian Party might be interested in having him come up for the general election and run against Trump. But this is pretty consistent for Amash. He has been vocally against Trump and has criticized him publicly for years, and so it's not that much of a surprise that it's him. I think what's sort of surprising is that I think people expected maybe other Republicans to follow suit. We haven't really seen anybody else follow suit yet. You've seen a little more criticism of the president from some Senate Republicans, but nobody really outright saying he should be impeached.
So the news that came out late yesterday afternoon was this authorization of the Justice Department to begin to release classified documents as it relates to the investigation of the Trump campaign. That's become quite a controversial topic in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, it's, investigating the investigators, and it's Trump, playing into this idea that there's this deep state out to get him, and now he has an attorney general who publicly has said that perhaps law enforcement was spying on Trump and intelligence was spying on Trump and his campaign, and so now they're going to take a look at this stuff and to basically give the attorney general free rein and power to over the CIA and others to compel them to cooperate. It's going to be interesting to see where this leads. Is this just politics? Is this just Trump being paranoid and trying to stir up another issue for 2020 and divert attention away from what really happened, what was concluded in the Mueller report in terms of potential obstruction of justice? Or was there a real, quote, spying or corruption or something within the FBI and CIA when it came to the Trump campaign? I guess we'll see what happens over the course of this investigation to see if this is legit or not.
Before we shift to the 2020 election, I have to ask you about Rex Tillerson, of course, the Secretary of State. Donald Trump's only picks the very best people. Rex Tillerson goes out there, has some criticisms of the president, and the president says, well, he's dumb as a rock. Why would anybody take a job with this president?